We essentially finished this page, Tadik Hey. We're up to the Kitzur. I don't know if you're going to go into the Kitzur, like I said. Kitzur Vayas has to be developed into a full-fledged presentation anyway. But what we have is a so to speak, a novel insight. Essentially, that in everything there is what's called the etzem. The different arenas, different different realities, each one having its own etzem. And Sechel is also one of those realities. Sechel, as we said, is that which makes sense of a certain phenomenon, that puts things in perspective and organizes it in a structure. Ultimately, this structure represents a true process where, starting from a point, it further develops and becomes a whole presence. What's called the shetach. A platform. Etzem at any level, even if it is etzem hasichli, is also l'mayla me'hasog. These are the last words on this page. It's also l'mayla me'hasog. Even though the sichli is something which is developed within the thought process, within the seichel of the person, therein, in that seichel which is developed in the thought process of the person, there is what's called an etzem. What's meant by the word etzem at this stage?
The stage of sichli?
Or sichli. Let us try and, and dig into this a little bit just for a moment. Going back to our virtual table, we spoke about the table from many perspectives and many levels. Now we're talking about the table at the sichli level, which is actually a structure of a certain design, and this design provides for the usage of the table and everything else that comes along with it. If we start taking apart the usage of the table and everything else that comes along with it, the usage we can readily identify. There has to be a board upon which you can put things. That's what a table is. Then there is another phenomenon with the table. Before I go there, I want to compare a table to a chair, if I may. Both have four legs and both stand. Let us consider the standing phenomenon of a chair versus the standing phenomenon of a table. The standing phenomenon of a chair is totally part of the usage of the chair. The chair is meant to hold up a person sitting down, and this is provided by the fact that it stands. The standing phenomenon of a table is different. It's on a different level. And that is that the table has to stand prior to its usage. A chair stands when you have to use it. And its usage is part of the fact that it stands. A table has an independent presence in the room. Whenever you need to put something down, you'll have the chair. They have the table there. That's basically the presence of a table in the room. Even when you're not using it, it still stands in the middle of the room. Chairs, a chair. Today we have these falling chairs. Chairs don't have to stand until you have to sit on it. Its standing is part of its usage. Whereas a table, the standing is an independent thing. There's a certain truth about it standing there. It's on the ready at all times. We can understand how you use a table. And we can define it and explain it in all kinds of different ways. But this phenomenon, that a table has to stand at the ready, even when it's not in use. Even when there's nobody in the house. It's part of the reality of a home. That we don't have a means to fully comprehend. This is beyond usage. This reflects a reality of a home, the reality of a human being. It's a Sechel. We can explain its purpose and its function, and yet it evades our fullest comprehension. This Sechel, the etzem of this Sechel is recognized in Chochmah, but it cannot be brought down into Hasaga. Thank you for the water. Once it comes into Hasaga, the oil, which means the essential reality of it, of what you're talking about, the atzmi, conceals itself, has to be concealed, because that does not lend itself to be defined in a metzius of Sechel. Chochma relates to it. This is what the Rebbe says, that there is what's called, in the Sechel itself, there is what's called Etzem HaSechli. Even though Sechli refers to that which has a functional definition. Function, you would think, is not an atzmi. It's caused by the need of the function. And yet, there is also the atzmi of the function, of the Sechli. As I said yesterday, that there is a significant difference whether a person goes to a buffet and makes his own plate, or he sits at the place and he's being served. Food-wise, it's exactly identical, but there is an essential difference in terms of how much of the human status is reflected in these two modes. Even when he goes to the buffet and picks up his own food, he also uses a plate. He doesn't stand there and use it and eats with his hands. It's also a human phenomenon there. There's a plate and there's a fork and spoon, whatever it is. But that aspect, that oil aspect, is not fully comprehended at that stage where you're actually explaining what you're doing. In concept, yes. All right, let's go on further. Any comments on this?
This was to explain.
Hello, PALTIEL. Hello?
Yeah.
I have a question. Everybody's had a comment. Great question. Could you?
I can hear you. 1 second. Go ahead.
Is there an English word for the term Sechli?
Oh.
What the difference between Sechli, a Sechli, and a Haskalah?
I cannot hear you.
Can you hear now? Is that
Yeah. I cannot hear you, Baruch.
I can't understand why not.
You're not talking to your phone.
What?
He doesn't talk into his phone.
Hold the phone to your
right
mouth.
To your mouth.
It is right in my mouth, okay?
Okay.
This connection, this phone connection, is really not very good lately. That's a separate question. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. What is the English translation for the term Sechli? And how is it distinguished from the term Haskalah?
Haskalah is, I said many times, Haskalah is consensualization. Sechel is comprehension.
Sechli means, not Sechel, I'm asking Sechli. We're using all this in the word.
Well, in Sechel there are different levels. There's the Chochma, which refers to the conceptual, the creation of the Sechel, this conceptualization. And then in Bina, this is where it is being understood. And this is what's called comprehension.
understand this. I'm asking about the word Sechel.
Intelligent.
Comprehension. That's what it means, like Hasaga.
Intelligent, yes. I have a whole talk on intelligence versus instinct.
No, I understand that, but that doesn't seem that we're using it here. We say Etzem Sechel, right? That's the term.
Right. Etzem HaSichli.
And therefore, how do we translate that? The Etzem of comprehension.
Why does it make sense that you should be served at your place rather than go and fetch your food from a buffet? And why does it make a difference?
And this is not part of the conceptualization.
No, because no, it's not conceptualization. This also has a level of conceptualization, but this is on a practical level, on a Sechel level, on a Mitzias level. He doesn't come from a Nekudas HaAskola.
And the Etzem Sechel, is that part of the Sechel which is not really understood?
It is understood, but the etzem of it is not understood. It makes sense. Why does it make sense?
You can't explain why it makes sense.
That's right.
Okay, I'm done.
That's Akiva.
Well, this it was around this point that just to ask that these two mashalim that you brought, this was to understand the sichli of Chochmah, particularly.
No, the sichli, after it's in Chochmah, after he comes into Bina. This is the sichli. In the Bina itself, there is a sichli and there's an etzem to that sichli.
And this is the sensing of the human quality is more prominent in the person being served at a table rather than serving himself as he stands in the
That's right.
upright.
Upright, and you use a plate, and everything else is there. Still eating like a human being, not like a cat. But there's a certain element of dignity that is hidden there. Okay.
And while I'm asking these questions, and this the table that is always set, that it's always on the ready, as compared to the chair.
Mm-hmm.
This is showing on something of Mitzias that has at some quality.
Yeah.
That was the point of it?
Yeah. It's a seichel, but it's non-functional.
It's the appreciation that this table will always be on the ready. That's like are we speaking there as the table is to itself, or is the table is a human device?
A human device.
that there's always the possibility for this a human grace, a human dignity implied by the table, always on the ready.
The rest I'll let you up to you. Okay, let's turn the
It's a little
page.
bit evasive that I couldn't catch.
What?
I didn't catch it exactly. That's why I asked about it.
Omnom. However, I said the word omnom means however in truth, which means that despite all the things that we said, and they all make sense, and we've come to a certain conclusion, but in truth, which means that you go to the essence of this which we discussed. Nira v'nirgash adover. Nira means it's obvious. And nirgash, and it's sensed. The principle is sensed. Okay? Since we are saying omnom, which means that now we have to kind of solicit from ourselves a sense of what is truth. Nira v'nirgash adover, it is seen and it's sensed. What is this saying? What are we referring to? Shegam hasichli de chochmo, that even the sichli of chochmo, the sichli are the way it is in chochmo. We said before that there is a sichli the way it is in chochma, and then when the sichli comes into bina, and pardon me, and in bina it is not fully comprehended. In chochma we have the sichli in the fullest sense. But if you focus more closely, identify more closely what you are recognizing and feeling in chochma, you will find that even the sichli of chochma be'etzem, that sichli that is recognized in chochma, the sichli element, not the etzem ha-sechel, the conceptualization, but the sichli as it is already a developed sechel, the way it is known and recognized and accepted in chochma, eina yinyan hasoga be'emes, is in truth not an element of hasoga. All right, we'll go into the Sinyan, and then perhaps we'll reflect back. That the sichli of Chochmah, in essence, is not a union of Hasoga. Hasoga means, translated Hasoga, Hasoga means, I mentioned the word Hasoga means to capture, to catch, which means you're chasing something, and ultimately that thing is evading you, and then you finally catch up with it. It's Hasoga. How do you catch up with it? You catch up with it because you have the means of grasping it, or getting hold of it. So we say the sichli of Chochmah, in essence, is not a union of Hasoga, is not a Hasoga type of Sechel. Even though it's in Chochmah and you really sense this inyan, but you did not really comprehend it, did not really catch it into your mind. What then is it that we are experiencing when we sense the truth of this Sechel? It is this, the beyikroi, because in its essence, in its core, in its central an important element, hu inyan hanocha b'nefesh. It is really an inyan what's called hanocha b'nefesh. Hanocha b'nefesh something that finds a place, a resting place in your nefesh, from hanoch. Hanocha b'nefesh is a kind of a sechel, that the sechel itself is like, has an element of AYIN to it. It's not an active sechel, like hasoga. It is hanoch. It has it rests in the nefesh. It's like the AYIN of sechel. For example, this cup is standing on the table. This cup is standing on the table because it was put there. And therefore, it is being held there. But at its essential level, yes, indeed, it wasn't there before, and now it is there. But once it is there, it finds it is there. Pardon me, without challenge. It is not there in a sense that you're here, but you're occupying somebody else's place. You don't really belong here. You're put down there. No, it finds its place. It's really at full rest in this new place, as if it was there all the time. You can't tell the difference. Hanocha b'nefesh is of that caliber. Even though it is something which is discovered like a chokhmah, I get to know it. But I get to know it in such a manner that it completely rests, so to speak, in the nefesh. I don't feel like I discovered something. And this is why I'm at a loss to describe what it is that I know. It is not hasoga. It is an essential realization, a sechel in the nefesh. It's a hanocha b'nefesh. Anybody can relate to this? Let's go into parentheses for a moment. It's a short parenthesis. Aleg in nefesh. Aleg in nefesh, the word aleg is a translation of hanocha, something that finds a restful place in the nefesh. It's put down, but it's resting there. Was by him, that by him, by this person who's got this hanocha, es legt sich die Sache also, es legt sich die Sache also. Es legt sich, this thing, this concept finds a place in his mind as such, in such a way. That means hanocha b'nefesh. It is not something that he can describe, that he can justify, argue his point. but it is a fait accompli, so to speak, a concluded realization, without challenge internally.
It is not. What's the it is not?
It is not something that you know by virtue of having convinced yourself of it. Rather, it's as if this thing was always there. Like I said, the cup on the table, you know that it wasn't there all the time. But at this moment, it is there without challenge. It fits the entire environment. Pardon me. Okay, we're not finished yet with this. Again, I asked whether we can sense what we're talking about.
This is like completing the circle, where, I mean, it originated by Chochma, L'mayla mi-Chochma, now it became Lefi Sechel, became Sichli, but now there's Hanachas. It's at rest, back in the Nefesh.
It's at rest, but that's the risk of it. It's at rest, but on an intellectual level.
Right, meaning it still has reality on the level of Sichli.
Sichli, not on Chochma. It is a Sichli, yeah, but you know what it is.
But surely it's reconnected back with that originating light, the Or Shenelam.
Yeah,
right?
but that it is an Elam.
Even
Now
though
it becomes a Sichli.
Even though it's gone back to the state of Laniach, Hanachas, Benefesh, you'd think, okay, it's reunited with its...
No.
It's originating...
Hanach Benefesh is not going back. It's going forward.
Okay. Forward into what?
Into conscious knowledge.
But we did say the Nefesh, not the Sechel. It came out into Sechel, but now it's now Hanachas Benefesh, seemingly back to a soul rest. Not Hanachas Besechel, that went through that.
One second. Sechel is also in the Nefesh. Except it's a chitzenius, but there's a Nefesh element in there. Sechel is not a standalone presence. That is derived from the Nefesh. No, it is supported by Nefesh. It's an interesting, phenomenally fine identification of what's going on, so to speak, in a person's mind and in Sechel and in Nefesh. We say all the time, yeah, it makes sense to have your Sechel. But what gives the Sechel a right of being? It's a nefesh. The Sechel is not something like the Sechel Chitzoni, the worldly Sechel, which is not Sechel altogether. 2 times 2 equals to 4 is not Sechel. It's not something you know from your nefesh. You know from experience, from the external experience. It looks like it's going to be a later meeting today, huh? People were up last night, probably. Let's just go through the next line so we have the complete thing. Ve'im heyois, although shezehu loy bichinas ha'anocha mitzutat horiyo, that this is not a hanocha that comes from just observation, horiyo, like chochma, ki mitzad ha'asoga, but rather because of haskola, because it's understood. It's conceptualized already. Nonetheless, hine hasichli gufa hu b'derech hanocha. The sichli itself is in a hanocha manner, loy b'derech hasoga. The sichli itself is known not through a path of hasoga, but rather through a path of hanocha. I know this before I even start. It's with hanocha. והסיכלי שבזה, the sichli element in this, והיינו, מה ששייך להסוגה, that part which is a sichli, which is related to hasoga, to comprehension, הו בחינת החיצייניס לבד, this is only the chitzonius of it. ועצם הוא עניין הוא בדרך הנוחה. But the essence of this thing is b'derech hanocha is in a preconceived manner, unchallengeable. This is it. Or whatever.